And Luke brought his Camaro out today. It's LT1 bolt-on car. Not sure what all bolt-ons it has. He hasn't done the throttle body bypass. He does have the cold air intake. It's got the headers and the off-road Y. It's got gears and a stall. And that's the reason he's brought it over today, is because it's got a transmission leak. After the shop done it, I guess he took it back to the shop and they told him that they couldn't find the leak. Funny thing is, I found it instantly.
They ain't working on it no more.
But he's under there. His headers are different than mine. I have the pace setters. And we're having to drop the transmission so we can get to those transmission lines better, because there ain't much room over there to get to the transmission lines. But his headers, they're narrow, more narrow underneath the car, and we're dropping the back of the transmission, so we're taking the 4 cross member bolts out, and this Y pipe is right underneath those 2 bolts. Mine, it clears those 2 bolts easy, so I don't know. It's different headers, I guess. That's why when you buy headers and Y pipe, you want to get the same brand together, because they are different. But this car, he did take it to the LTX shootout last year, 2020, and it ran a 13.0 spinning. You just had a street tire on it, didn't you?
Yeah. What's on it now? Street tire.
Yeah, he was just running these street tires. Now, it was all over the place, but when it did hook, it ran a 13.0.
But 14.6 the first time.
Well, he'd run a 14, then a 13, then a 13, a low 13, but it was all the tires wanting to spin. But definitely needs some tires on it. But yeah, look at this little clip, and I'll show you where it was leaking at. Right there. See it? It's leaking out of that one right there. It's leaking out of the brass part and the line part. See, it should look like that one. But now this ain't right either, but I'm making a video. This ain't right either, but the way they've got it jammed down in there, it's sealing. So this part is supposed to be down in there further, and then there's a lip that's supposed to be on this part. But what they've done is they didn't stick this all the way down in the hole, but that lip is down in there, and it's expanded enough that that's not leaking. But that top one right there is leaking. Alright, so we found the leak, as y'all had seen on there. Then what it looks like, the dog, he loves to play fetch. That's all he wants to do, play fetch. It looks like on here, I know you probably can't see it that good, but the flare is not true. There's barely any flare on this side, and then there's a bunch of flare on this side. So I mean, it was nice and tight. So the flare is just crooked. I guess they made, these weren't the stock lines that came in it, because they had that end on them where they'd go to a rubber line. And what they did was they went from a rubber line to the transmission cooler. It's got one of those transmission coolers that push on a rubber line. But we're going to put these braided lines on. They're just easier to deal with. And they're the 6AN. So if you have the transmission cooler that has the fittings already on it, you just go from transmission cooler to the transmission. And the shop that he had done it, they just went through the transmission cooler. They're not going through the radiator. On my car, I go through the radiator first, and then I go through the transmission cooler, and then it comes back to the transmission. Which, I mean, if you got a big enough transmission cooler, you really just only need the transmission cooler. But anyway, we're going to put these braided lines on them. Now, it came with fittings, but the fittings that came with that go in the transmission, actually all these fittings, are MPT. So I didn't really care too much for the MPT in the transmission. So I got the MPS fittings, which the difference is the threads are straight on MPS, and then on MPT they're tapered. So MPS for straight, I'm assuming, and MPT, T for tapered, I'm assuming. But you don't get that much. Yeah, see, MPS, 1/4 inch 18 MPS. These go in the transmission. I just like to use the MPS and then the gasket, and then that, which those are a washer. I thought it was supposed to come with a gasket, but either way, I guess it's a washer gasket. But I'm gonna put those in there, and then up here by the transmission cooler, I'm gonna use a 6AN to barb and just run just a little bit of rubber line from the cooler to this barb. Yeah, that's it. Now, they do have fittings in here which are MPT for the radiator, which I did use an MPT on my car for the radiator side. But yeah, we're gonna get that in there, and then he's got the low car top flexible full dipstick tube. Not sure where I'm gonna mount that at. Plus I need to measure that and make sure that it's the same as that. And we'll get that in there. But the first thing is, I've already took the lines off and already took the dipstick tube out, as you can see. But there's that little brass looking fitting up inside the transmissions. I got to take that out and replace it with these. So that's what I'm going to do now. And then after that, I can run the line to those, run it up front. And those are already pre-made lines, so I'll have to figure out how far up front they're going to go, and I'll go from there.
So as you see in the video here, they later on, he's got or I may have mentioned it earlier, but anyway, he has the transmission cooler that only has the barb fittings on it, so you have to use some rubber line there. And I'm not a fan of using rubber line on transmission lines, but I've had my car like that for quite some time now, and it's not a big deal. But just make sure that you route those to where they're not going to melt on anything, rub on anything, you know, to where they'll burn or cut through, and make sure you use a good rubber high pressure line. But we ran the line to this, and then the AN line to this, and then we just run the rubber line a little bit to the cooler. And this is the line that he bought. It this actually was barely long enough to do what we did. Luckily it just worked out. But if you're running to the transmission, this line isn't going to be long enough. I just bought this because I didn't want to have to make my own line. But if you're running to the transmission or something like that, make sure you take some measurements and get the size you need if you want it pre-made for you, or make it yourself. They say that these things take forever to fill your transmission up, but this one right here, it took transmission fluid just as quick as a stock line would. Not as quick as a stock line would, but I mean close. I mean, I hear people say that they use these and it takes 30 minutes to put 1 quart in. Well, that wasn't the case with this one, because 1 quart went down in like 30 seconds. And this is the fittings we used for the transmission. Again, like I said, it came with some MPT ones, but I like to use the MPS on the transmission side.
Alright, so there's the fittings I'm taking out. Brass colored ones there. Already got the socket on the left one there, and as you can see, already got the line out. See, both lines. The other line was on the table as I showed you, but I'm going to take those out and replace those with the 6AN fittings. Alright, there we go. Both the fittings out. This is them right there. And now to put the 6AN fittings in there. 1/4 18 MPS. Alright. I got the alright, we got the 6AN fittings in there. Just need to get a wrench on them, make sure they're tight. It's hard to get the socket in there, but actually it was easy getting the 3/8 socket in there, but the 1/2 inch wasn't that easy. But I don't have any deep wells, so I need some deep well sockets. So I use the 1/2 inch, but it's hard to get it in there. But now we got a wrench in there and tighten those up. But there's those fittings in for the lines. Alright, so I got the fittings on there, or the lines on the fittings rather, and I hope that I didn't, I boogered up the end of those AN fittings when I used that shallow socket. So I hope it don't leak. If it does, I'm gonna have to take those back out and get new ones and put it back on. But yeah, that shallow socket I had, it would barely fit over, and I used it anyway, and it scratched up the where it seals out a little bit. But hopefully it don't leak. We'll see. Got everything nice and tight. Now on the front, I just got to put the 6AN to barbed on there, and then put the lines on and put the dipstick tube in, and figure out a place to put the dipstick tube. But that's where we're at. All right, so with this kit, there's the radiator right there, touching it with my thumb. So these lines, that's as far as they go. So if you was using this for your radiator, it wouldn't even reach unless you added some lines on it. I just bought this kit because, number one, I thought they were longer than that. I should have did some measuring, but I didn't want to have to make my own lines because every time I make those lines, I do it by hand, and it's not easy doing it by hand. I don't have the vise and stuff like that. But anyway, I'm going to put those on the end of it. And then right here's one transmission line they had. That's the way the shop did it that he went to. And then the transmission cooler's right there in front of the air conditioning condenser. So I'm just going to cut these rubber lines back a little bit and make these braided lines reach as far as they can, and just cut the rubber line and use those. That's where I'm at right now. And there we go. We got that all in just like that. And then the rubber lines, like I said, go to the front of the air conditioner radiator for the transmission cooler. And I'll just zip tie those up out of the way. I should do it. Hopefully it don't leak back there where I boogered up that the AM fitting on them fittings that go in to the transmission. Hopefully that don't leak, but if it does, just take the lines off, take the fittings out, and get new fittings. And this time make sure we don't booger up the end of it, but we'll see what it does. Alright, so next up, I'm going to put some Vaseline on that. I'll leave it up real good. See if I can't drop it in and push it in. Alright, I got the dipstick tube in, and I was hoping that thing would come up farther than what it does. But I'll figure something out with it. And it was pretty tight going into the transmission. But what I found, if you put a wrench right here, just over, that one's got a big nut on it right there. So if you put a wrench right here on the line and push down on the nut, it helps it go in. I would have took a video underneath the car to show you what it looked like down there, but I forgot to take the phone down there with me. But really don't know where I'm going to mount that. But I'll figure something out. maybe make some kind of bracket coming off one of the intake bolts and see what we can't do. But still, that's going to be hard to fill with it back there, because I don't know if you guys have ever used any of those things, but you fill it with this. You stick that down in the hole where the dipstick goes, and then you put a funnel right there. And it takes forever to fill them up that way. And there just ain't that much room back there. But like I said, we'll figure something out with that. Right now, what I'm going to do is start the car up. I'll push that board way back under there to where it'll catch any fluid leaking from that area. And I'm going to see if it leaks. But now, it was low on fluid when it got here from where it was leaking. Plus, I'm sure taking all the lines off and everything like that, I made it even lower. So, I'm just going to see if it leaks with what fluid's in it. And then try to fill it up and then see if it leaks again. But that's where I'm at. Alright. I got everything in. I put the transmission bolt back in that holds the dipstick and the wire loom, the transmission wire loom. I put it back through the wire loom and bolted that back in, which is kind of cool because on his headers, I could reach that middle bolt with my hand. Believe it or not, on my headers, you cannot reach it with your hand. But those, whatever headers he has, they are different. So we had to lower the transmission cross member. So I bolted that back up. I have to put everything back up in there. I checked for leaks. I put another cord in it. I ran the car, put it in reverse, put it in drive a few times. And nothing came out and everything looked good. So hopefully when I put more fluid in it and fill it up, that'll still be the issue. But the only thing left to do is to, we lowered the transmission cross member. So I put that back up. I think I mentioned that already, but anyway. That low carb top, I'm not sure where it got it from, but it's that low carb, L-O-K-A-R, I think that's the way you pronounce it. Flexible dipstick tubes. That's as far up as it goes. So like I was saying before, not really sure where I'm going to mount that at. But really, that's the only thing left to do. Figure out a place for that, fill it up with transmission fluid, and see what happens. But I'm going to have to get it off the stands first, because I'm not going to be able to tell where the fluid level is with it setting backwards like that. The back side, it's too dark back there, but the back side's just on the ground. The front side's up on these wooden blocks I've got. But yep, and put it down on the ground. Drive it back and forth a little bit, check the fluid, get it up to temp, check the fluid, put more fluid in it, top it off, and then stick some cardboard under there and start it up and go back and forth and see if I get any leaks on my cardboard, and then go from there. Alright, so he's got that harness ran around there stock, and it's, put into the fuel rails there to hold it. So I just zip tied that. I wish I had black zip ties, but I don't. But that's just a for now thing. I'm actually going to make a bracket that comes off that back fuel rail bolt that comes over. I'm going to make a bracket for that. But that's just for now. The dipstick fits in there good. I got it laying here. Its car's warmed up. It's barely reading on the stick. And I did run it through the gears. I don't have any more fluid. I have to go get some more fluid. I think it's at least going to take another quart. If you look at my board, it's bone dry. So we don't have any leaks. So that looks good so far, but I'm just out here on my lunch. I work from home, messing with it. And we'll go get another quart after work, put in there, fill it up, top it off. Drive it a little bit, make sure it don't leak, and Lucas will probably come back and get it tomorrow. But and then work on making him a bracket for that. I'll take some measurements and stuff, and then once I get the bracket made, I'll get back with him and get him over here. So I have to go buy some sheet metal. If you got a sheet metal and a grinder, man, you can make a bracket, and a drill. You can make a bracket for anything. So, yep, that's what we're going to do, and everything looks good. I'll just top it off and drive it, make sure there's no leaks, and give it back to him. Just a lesson to be learned when you put those AN fittings in the transmission. Use a big enough socket that it's not going to scar up the end of the end of your fitting. And that's it. Y'all have a good day.